And most people don't ask those questions, Joe, as I'm sure you know very well. Like most people, when you ask them what they want, what do they say?
Power to Live More with Joe Dodds.
Welcome to the Power to Live More podcast, all about productivity, organisation, well-being, energy and resilience. I'm Jo Dodds, and I started this show to enable interesting people to share their stories about how they use their power to live more, and by that I mean to do the stuff that they want to do more than the stuff that they need to or should do. It's about creating a life for yourself where you have the energy, health and space to be happy and fulfilled, spending your time as you'd like, whether that be at work, home or somewhere else entirely. That's your choice.
Hello. My name is Ellie Dodds and I'm co-presenter, and today Jo is interviewing Nick Davies. Nick approached us a while back to come on the show. Jo did the interview and then somehow managed to lose it, which was a first, and she still doesn't know what happened. So Nick patiently agreed to do it again, and here we are, for you. Nick is a business and career coach with 20 years of background in financial services. Originally from London, England, Nick has also lived and worked in the Philippines, Florida, New York, and now calls Charlotte, North Carolina home. Over the last 4 years, Nick has shifted his focus on creating his purpose and now helps people and businesses through coaching. He's trained through Tony Robbins coaching and is also a certified health coach. Back to the studio.
Today I'm interviewing Nick Davies. Welcome Nick, thanks for joining me.
Hey, Joe. Great to be here.
Great to be here for a second time. I'm going to come clean with my audience and tell them that in the history of the podcast, I actually, for the first time ever, lost my interview with you. And you've very kindly agreed to come back and speak to me for a second time. So thank you so much for taking some time out of your day again to cover up my error from before.
Yeah, well, hey, we had a lot of fun the first time, so why not do it again?
Exactly. And we were just trying to work out when we last spoke, and it was actually just before lockdown, and we're now in the sort of middle of June, and clearly a very different scenario to when we last spoke. So that's quite an interesting sort of change that we didn't see coming when we were last speaking. So yeah. So this, just to give you some context, will be out around the beginning of July. But we're in the middle of June at the moment. As we were just saying, I'm not sure too much is going to have changed in the few weeks between now and when everyone's listening to this. So there we go. So start by telling us a bit about who you are, what you do, and crucially, where you do it.
Yeah, well, I am originally from London, Essex, really, for our UK listeners. And I now live in North Carolina, in Charlotte, North Carolina, in the States. And I had about 20-year career working in big banks, financial services. But for the last 4 or 5 years, I've changed my focus to being a business and career coach, something that's really aligned with what I'm passionate about. And I spent a lot of my career helping people, mentoring people, coaching people, bring them through, working in big teams, small teams, big projects, small projects, that type of thing. And I guess then the switch that I made was, well, now I can do this for people in their businesses, for the things that they really want, or in their lives for the things that they really want, or careers to get to them where they really want to go. And that's what I do now. And I get to do it every day, and I absolutely love it.
Brilliant. So there's so many questions that come out of that for me. And I guess my first one is how you ended up in North Carolina, because that's quite a long way from Essex. And I know you went there via various other places. So tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, it is. I always think, like, I grew up watching, I remember watching kids' TV shows and all the American shows. And there was something always about America. Like, I always had it in my mind that I wanted to move to America, and it kind of grew over the years. But, an affinity with New York. But if quite frankly, if someone asked me 15, 20 years ago where North Carolina was, I probably couldn't tell you. Or even knew that Charlotte was in North Carolina. But so it wasn't my intention to move here, but it's a beautiful place for sure. I mean, it's definitely home now. But yeah, after I left London, I lived in the Philippines, and lived in and worked in the Philippines for 2 years. I moved to America about 7 years ago, lived in Florida where I met my wife for 3 or 4 years, lived in New York where our daughter was born, So she's our little New Yorker. And then we've lived down in Charlotte for a little over 3 years now.
Wow. So do you think she's going to go out with a New York accent? No.
She's gonna have a little Southern accent, like a US Southern accent. Is probably what she's gonna end up with. Yeah.
Lovely. And so the coaching thing as well. You were in financial services. It's not something that most people would sort of align. Financial services and coaching. It doesn't sort of seem like it flows, but that's clearly where your interest in people and helping people started. How did that transition happen for you?
Yeah, interesting context. Thanks for that, Joe. I guess you're right. Yeah, it doesn't really align, does it? But what I was thinking, how I got there was an exploratory process in my mind, and then exploratory in terms of actions. And I started to think about, well, I don't want to be working in financial services anymore. This doesn't juice me up. It doesn't talk to me emotionally. I can't get myself to the level I want to get to be really successful, because I don't have that real compelling emotional juice to it. I was fairly successful at it because I approached it like a game, and I was good at doing that game, and I got to a certain point, but I knew I couldn't get to the next level because I didn't have no real passion for it. And so I thought, well, okay, I want to do something else. Hang on, I've spent 20 years, getting on 20 years for doing that, because I did it straight out of school. When I was 16, I went and worked for HSBC, and so I did it for 20 years. And well, let's not just throw away 20 years of stuff. There's got to be something good in there, right? And it was the people part of it. It is what did I like? What was the theme through all of those different locations and those different companies? And I was with one company for 13 years and working in those different avenues, different areas, locations. And it was those different countries I mentioned, but also different locations as well, working with people remotely and locally. And it was the people part of it. What did I like? What was the times where it was most satisfying? And it was when I was able to sit down one-on-one with people that in my team and get them to break through to the next level and get them to a place where they develop themselves, where they, I remember leaving certain locations and people coming up and shaking my hand and say, "Hey, thank you. You're the best manager I've ever had." Those type of things jumped out for me. And that's what I wanted to use to go to the next part of my career, my business. That's how I got to coaching. How can I help people on a regular basis? How can I do this and kind of syndicate it out and not be focused on this industry? How can I just do it and take these principles? Because principles, of course, are principles because they can be applied everywhere. And I came to the point, well, how can I do it? I could be a coach. Coach and do that and help people.
So I'm imagining at the moment, given all the changes that there've been in the world and unfortunately people finding themselves without work and all that sort of stuff, that there's probably a sort of a group of people thinking about what they can do differently, what they can do from home, what they can do that keeps them sort of potentially protected from, the economic issues and all that sort of stuff. And some people will undoubtedly be thinking about coaching and consulting and using their skills and knowledge to help people, as you've said. What were the sort of practical ways that you went from being in a corporate role to now being the coach that you are? I mean, it's on one hand sounds quite sort of doable, but I know from my own experience, and I'm sure you'll tell me the same, that it's never a straight line, and there's lots of learning along the way. What sort of experiences can you share with people that will help them if that's what they're thinking about doing?
Yeah, I started with, this exploration of personal development probably 10 years ago. What do I want to be when I grow up?
And you'll know that soon.
Yeah, exactly. Like when is it time to start playing this game properly? Like when do I need to really double down on this? What is it I want from life? And I think that realization is really important, because it's an association to the fear or the pain that there isn't an exponential amount of time that we have. Time is the only thing we can't get back. I think using that as a driving force for me to continue pushing down the road of searching. And just when I said that, I had a quick flashback from a time when I lived in the Philippines. I used to It was just me at the time, so I'd spend all my time working or working out. And I remember being in the gym, having my training diary and writing down my workout, and then taking notes in the back of it. And I was like, one of the things I used to keep writing was like, keep on searching, because I just didn't know what the next step was. But I knew that if I kept looking, I'd find something. And when I started to read a lot more books and started to get more into the journey, read about purpose. People need purpose. They need meaning in life. I'm like, oh, well, what does that mean? Like, what? Like, okay, I get it. Everyone says it. It must be true. There's enough people say that there must be some validity in it, but what is it? And find your purpose. What? Come on, give me something more than that. Like, and the distinction for me, Joe, was it's not finding your purpose, but it's more of creating your purpose. Because for me, the language of finding it suggests that I'm just walking down the street and I'm just going to get hit in the face with it.
Yeah.
When of course the reality is more of as a gradual thing of you just decide that the road that you want to go down and you start to take steps towards it, and it will become clearer and clearer.
And you talked about writing things in your notebook, which again strikes me as something that not everyone would do. But that's sort of part of what you said about, people talk about finding your purpose and, that it's just going to sort of happen. But not most people go through life doing life, don't they? They don't go through thinking about their purpose or their vision of what they want or really sort of working on it. That already hearing that you were writing in a training book as you were doing your gym work strikes me as being on the path to that personal development stuff that you talked about and that you're now helping other people with. I don't think a lot of this stuff comes naturally to a lot of people. Do you?
Yeah, I love this point. I love this thought process. Yeah, I think there's some. Well, I guess the thought of even thinking about things that come natural and don't come natural. I also want to perhaps come back to that a second, but I think that we're a product of our environment. There's certain defaults of our brain and the protective and the survival mechanisms that we have as well. Our brain is put there to help us to do that, to survive, not necessarily to make us happy. And we tend to get what the environment gives us unless we're intentional about it. And I believe that we're all searching for something. Like we're always, and if we're not actively doing it, it's because we're so ingrained in the patterns of not, that we just convince ourselves we can't. It's not available for us. And so I think there's some elements in the environment where we have to be creating that for ourselves. And that comes from. When I was about 15 years old, I started going to the gym and lifting weights, and that was like a big part of my life for a long time. And I still do that, not with the intensity, but I always, my friend at the time, I'm still friends with now, but where we used to work out at the time, one of the things that we used to talk to each other about, I think that there's some great physical benefits to this. And and let me be honest, at the time when I was in my early 20s or late teens, I was doing it to look good.
I knew that's what you were going to say.
Right? But we used to sit there and ponder, and like this stuff that we're doing here really is going to set out the basis for how we move forward, because it teaches you a lot more things than that. There's a discipline around it, the freedom that discipline creates. The moving your physical body around is the start, and it's like the bottom of the pyramid, where you haven't got your health, you haven't got anything. But not just like, I'm okay, I'm not sick. More like, well, how can I maximize and go to that side of it? So I think a lot of that I used to say at the time, and I can see it now still, that kind of set me on the path about doing things. If you want to be different, if you want to break out a little bit, you've got to do things that are consistently different, right? Because the default around you is going to be bringing you down. And that's not because people are mean. It's just because that's nature, is that the default, if you don't do anything, is that they get worse, not get better. You have to be intentional about that.
It's interesting you talking about the sort of the gym stuff and I suppose you're talking about habits and sort of the shape of doing things on a regular basis. And but again, I don't think everyone, there's many people who go to the gym all the time, and I guess they've got all the endorphins and all that stuff kicking in, which probably encourages them to keep going on it too. But they don't always take the learnings of consistent application and habits and all the stuff that you get from that gym experience, if like, into the rest of their lives. It's interesting. Some people do, but many people don't. I guess that's sort of part of that difference. And you've obviously taken a lot of that, and you're now applying that with how you work with people. Has that been a conscious example to share with people, if you like, or is it something that's now coming to you because you're looking back on it, having realised now why, if you sort of mean? These are very complicated questions. But
let's keep going deep, Joe. Yeah, let's hit it hard. No, absolutely. No, yeah, cool. I think like this all one thing leads to the next thing. Like if I think about that time, all I was obsessed with was bodybuilding, like lifting weights and looking good. All right, and that was my environment most of the time.
Yeah.
Whilst working as well and grinding, doing that and working out, like that was it. Like that was my experience, and then there was the party side of it as well, and that was getting deep in anything. I think gives you different layers of understanding of it.
Right. Yeah.
The high level understanding of most stuff that we live in this age of information. There's infinite amounts of information available for us on any given subject at any given time. So it's very easy for us to say, I know that. Yeah, I someone's told me that before. I understand what you're saying to me. I hear the words coming out of your mouth and intellectually understand that. That's very different from actually doing it and experiencing it. And it's more, I find the older that we get, the more experience that we get, or the more things that we learn, should I say, that the more that shows up for us. It's easy to say, yes, I know that, when you've heard it a million times. But there's a completely different level to get to when you actually apply it a million times. It's to use the gym as an example. It's look, I know how to work out. I've seen it. I've done it. And someone invites you to come to the gym with them, and you're like, okay, cool. Now I'm in the gym. Can you do my workout for me? Well, no.
It doesn't quite work like that, does it?
Yeah, I know how to do it. I know how to do it. Well, but the value, of course, is in the experience of doing it.
Yeah.
And doing a bench press, not just once or 10 times. You know how to do it after that. But once you've done it 1,000 times, there's different levels of distinctions that you make. I think that immersive experience, and whatever it is, and here's the thing, it doesn't matter what the vehicle is. It just matters that you get that immersive experience. I think these deep principles can be learned from doing anything. And it doesn't have to be lifting weights, of course. It could be swimming. It could be horse riding. It could be football. It could be anything that you do, some sort of physical experience on that, and getting deep on it. You start to make those deeper distinctions. And then it's all about looking for the principles and the patterns. And that's what I get the privilege of doing with all my clients, is to see that. Someone in one industry, what are they doing to be super successful, especially right now in the environment? And then how can that apply to another industry as well? Because it's just principle. And that's what's cool, to do it for myself, to see those threads, how I apply, and then also that from a client perspective as well.
Yeah. So what have you seen in the last 3 months whilst we've been in this like completely weird time that none of us were expecting? Are there principles coming out of that already? I mean, I think I keep forgetting, because I'm in a relatively privileged position in terms of, our house garden, being able to get food, and my work carrying on and everything else. And I keep forgetting how awful a lot of people's situations are, because that's not my experience. But it's fluctuated all the way through. You read the news, you hear how people are feeling, and then you sort of feel it, and then you push that away and live the life you've got, and then it comes back again. And it's even in a less difficult situation, it's still been an emotional roller coaster. And obviously you're working with business people and coaching them through this at the same time. What sort of things have you been saying?
It's interesting to see as well, like over the last couple of months, how that it's changed. But initially, a lot of leadership qualities were really jumping out for me. Back to our mind being there for us primarily to survive. I think when something happens and the environment changes so significantly, first things we always do is focus on something. And when we focus on something, we then have to define what it means, right? It's survival. Okay, I'm looking at the world coming to an end. Okay, the virus is something that's happening in Asia. Is it gonna spread to different countries within Asia outside of China? Is it going to come to Europe? Is it going to come to the US? Is it going to come to South America, et cetera, et cetera? Okay, well, if it comes to my country, then okay, well, there's danger. If it comes to my town, then there's more danger. What happens if it comes to our town? What happens if it comes to my family? What if I can't work? What if I haven't got any money? What if I can't buy food? What if we all die? And that's where your head goes. You're going to go down that rabbit hole if you focus on the fear of what might happen. So that focus is the fear, because then it goes to that meaning part, which I just described. And then when it comes to the next part, which is the action part, like, what do I do about this? Because we focus on something to then define what the meaning of it is, then to find what do I need to do about it. If you're focusing on those things, it's just the fear. You can't control it. So the action step becomes not applicable. So people have got to put it somewhere. So it looks like some of the crazy things that we saw earlier on, like buying all toilet paper, for instance.
Yeah,
because it's got nowhere to go. And then the other side of that is that focus on, okay, what can I do here? What opportunities do I have? How can I make things better? How can I help and give back here? When you do that, in terms of the focus on what can I do better, then the meaning is more empowering, and then the action steps become something you can actually do to help people get better. So the people that are thinking about that leadership standard of holding themselves to that level, how can I do better here? How can we not just get through this, but how can we make things even better? What doors have been opened now because of the current environment that would not have been opened at all beforehand? And to become more by doing that and able to give back more. And that's really early on. And what I'm seeing now is, because of some application of those things, there's a wider gulf between the people that have done that and the people that haven't.
Yeah.
So people that have had that pain up front, focus on the fear, are now back into the comfort zone a little bit of, well, everything's going to be okay. I'll just get through this. And that's good enough. But the people that are not accepting that's good enough are now actually been applying the things, the opportunities that they saw. So they're actually at a different place than they would have been. So they're actually better off now than they would have been if the year had gone so far as they expected.
Yeah.
I had some clients say to me, I've never had so much money in my bank. Thank you, COVID. And I know that this thing is real. And to your point, I know that there's so many people that are on the front line, as it were, that are feeling a completely different experience.
Yeah.
I get that and I understand that. But there's also choices to decide. Like those people that are in a different position where they've been able to leverage those choices. And that I believe that's there because they can grow more, and therefore they can help the people that perhaps weren't in the best situation to start with. But that's what I see for sure.
It's a real adaptability thing as well, though, isn't it? It's a bit like I described sort of at the beginning, where, my view changes based on, what I hear and what's going on. Everything else, my experience hasn't changed that much. Like I said to you, I hadn't actually left the house.
Right.
So not a lot has changed here. But I was talking to some clients of mine the other day, and they have a yoga studio in Australia, and we were talking about, as they're starting to be able to potentially reopen, but they can only fit certain numbers of people into the studio. So actually, from a profitability point of view, it doesn't really make sense to open, but they obviously don't want to let down the people who do want to come back and all that sort of stuff. And the conclusion we reached in the end was, this is really odd that 3 months ago, everyone knew it was very black and white. Everyone knew what was happening. It was, we were locked down, nothing could happen, nobody could operate. We need to work out what we're going to do. So they started looking at the online option and all that sort of stuff. But they feel like now it's so grayer, so much grayer, that they don't actually know what to do, because there's so many variables. Whereas, 3 months ago, when it seemed like the end of the world and it seemed like there was no way forwards, it was quite a sort of one decision or the other, whereas now it almost seems more sophisticated and complicated because there's more options, which is a positive, or it should be, but it feels in some ways that it's not. And it's I think those people who are more adaptable and, as you say, are thinking wider about the situation, the future, and how they can respond to it, probably are coming out of it better. But it's hard because it just changes all the time.
Sometimes we just want the luxury of no choice.
Exactly. Yes, that's true.
Yeah. I find it's a case of a constant balance between, or like a dance between right now and what you want the most, right? The long term and the short term thinking. If you can't spend your time exclusively in either. But most people I found spend way more time in the now, like it's short term thinking. Yeah. And that's not the same as being present to the moment. I'm just thinking about like the immediate, okay, what's going to happen tomorrow? What's going to happen next week? And if you think about just in that terms, if you think about it being in the weeds or being in a jungle, all you can see around you is those things that are right there. You have no context as to how big the jungle is. You might be right on the edge of it, and 2 more steps you take out and you're in this big clearing and everything is clear. But if you can't see that, then you can't see that. And so you've got to play the balance, but the balance between being there and taking the 1,000-foot view so you can see what the hell's going on. You need to be down there because that's where the action is. Like, you need to take the action to do what you need to do. You've got to be able to jump out and think long term. What do I need to do now that's ultimately going to pay off? It's kind of like thinking about the stock market as well. It's okay. Well, the stock market's gone crazy because of everything that's going on in the environment. Everything's gone down. And yeah, it bounces back, goes down, bounces back, goes down. And ultimately, you can think about it like, well, all the stocks are on sale right now because these companies haven't fundamentally lost the value. It's just everyone's scared right now. And so these stocks are on sale. And you know what? I'm going to buy them now. They're on sale. And maybe the market goes down even more in the next couple of months. But in 10 and 20 years' time, I'm going to win because of this. And that's the longer term thinking. Fear-based short-term thinking is gonna not allow you to see what's best overall. Like you don't mind if it goes down for a little bit, if ultimately it's going to come back. And so I think there's that dichotomy between those two areas that we need to make sure that we're in the right place and ask ourselves: am I thinking too short-term right now, or am I thinking too long-term right now? Do I need to get back to the action?
The other thing I've been talking about recently is that when we talk about the fight-flight thing, we often don't think about the freeze. So it's fight, flight, freeze. And so fight and flight is, very aggressive or very depressive or whatever. The freeze actually is, for me, that bit where people don't take any action at all because it's sort of like, I don't know, I always think of it being a bit zombie-like, that you can't decide, you don't know where to go, so you just do nothing. And that's, I think, the bigger problem at the moment, because you've got to do something, haven't you? Whatever that might look like.
Yeah, that's the worst part. Yeah, absolutely. Nothing. Like, you don't do anything, you get no results. Or at least if you're fighting or you're flying, you're gonna get some sort of result.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's why I think action's so important, and this is such a big distinction for me over the last 4 or 5 years about taking action. It's like, well, sometimes we get paralyzed because there's all these different things we can do. What should I do? To your point, right? It's all these different options, and which one's the best? Which one's the best? I don't know. So you end up in that paralyzed state, in that frozen state, and you don't do anything. And when you don't do anything, you get no more results. You get no more information to make any other choices. So nothing changes. So that's why action's so important, because it doesn't even matter what the action is. Sometimes just do something, because that's going to give you a result. It's going to give you some sort of return. It's going to give you more information. Gather more information, you can make another decision and another decision, take more action. So that, I think that's thank you for that distinction, Joe. I think yes, super important for sure.
It's interesting. I've been doing some work with some students in the last few weeks where they were doing things that were very much outside of their comfort zone, and they were sort of pushing back, and I could tell they were sort of scared. And I was thinking it wasn't going to sort of come through. And I've had a couple of scenarios this week where I've thought, oh my goodness, they've just transformed what they've done, what they can do, their attitude and everything. And it's just reminded me how important helping people to do exactly what we've just said, take some action, whatever that might be, and then work with the results is in terms of, people's personal development and their growth.
Yeah, it really, especially, and I find as well that people that are like very, very ponderous type people, very, very thought-provoking people, have some deep thoughts, a lot of opportunities, tend to do that more because they can see so many ways of doing things, right? It's like, well, these are all the options. Wow, like, and you can get lost in that process, and it's kind of like, I think that's one of the biggest things about coaching is that you can come on and talk to a coach, or you can listen to a trainee or something and make some great distinctions and have a great time doing it and love it. If you don't turn it into action, it's pretty useless. Because we think about knowledge as being power, but really knowledge is just potential power. You don't use it, it doesn't mean anything. You can't gain any experience from it. You won't move forward. You can't help people, and you just got to put it into action.
Yep, absolutely. So let's do a bit of a leap there. Let's pretend it's a segue into a more practical question about you taking action. How you work and how you make sure you do the things that you want to do. We started the conversation ages ago talking about purpose, but let's talk more sort of practically about how you make sure you're doing those daily actions, those weekly, monthly actions or whatever to get you to where you want to be. How do you do that?
Oh, cool. Thank you. That's a great question. Well, I think that conceptually it's about understanding where you want to go, understanding where you are, and knowing and giving yourself the perspective without judgment that this is just where I am right now. And then once you know where you want to go and where you are, then you've got the gap. And then it's, how do I step into the gap? How do I take steps towards closing that gap? And then once you close the gap, then you start the process again. And I work with ProAdvisor Coach, and ProAdvisor Coach, the concept that we use that pulls that together, which I just find is just, we have to go back to this all the time because it's clarity you get from this is amazing. AAA approach. First A is awareness. Awareness of where do you want to go and where you are now. Not bury your head in the sand, everything's great, or not make things worse than they are, but just where are you now? What's the reality?
Yeah.
And where do you want to go? What's that real compelling future? Like what's the dream life? Not what's the best that I can get with what I think is available, or how can I get that little 5%? Like what do you really want? Really? Like if you could have anything, suspend disbelief. What is that? What is life on your terms? And most people don't ask those questions, Joe, as I'm sure you know very well. Like most people, when you ask them what they want, what do they say? Well, I don't want to work at this job for much longer. Or I don't want this relationship to be this bad for very long. They would just tell you what they don't want. Right?
Yeah,
So you're not going to get what you do want if you don't even know what it is.
No.
So I think that's those two things, and follow that process to start to create the awareness. Then the next A is action plan. That is to brainstorm specifically are the actions that you can measure on a daily and weekly basis that's going to get you to where you want to be. And I think this is such an important point to underscore a couple of times with red pen, like a teacher, is that it's easy to get to the places that you want to get to, because all you have to do is do the things repeatedly to get you there. I mean, real simple example is you could use a working out example again, but we did that already. So let's an example of, say, like a sales. If it's going to be the more people that you touch, reach out to, the more conversations that you have, the more relationships you build is going to equal the more sales that you have. Mm-hmm. So the repeatable things that you can measure yourself on a daily basis and a weekly basis is how many people do you talk to? And talking to one person is easy. And so that's the step, and it's just a case of doing that consistently. So, well, if it's easy, then why aren't more people successful in what they want? It's just because not doing it is also easy.
Yeah,
right. It's like it's the difference is the intention. It's the small steps. It's the things that you can do every day. It's like I have 5 conversations a day, and I do that on a consistent basis, 25 conversations a week, 100 conversations a month, there's going to be people there that resonate with you. There's going to be people there that want your product or service. And if you double that, then there's going to be double the amount of it. And then you start to get into the compound interest of it, was that the more they do it, the better you get at it. And so you're going to get a return which is bigger than you expected in those smaller numbers. And then you're going to get to where you want to be. It's just the small steps we want to measure. We want to measure the things that are in your control. So that's part of the action plan. And then the to create what that looks like. And then the third A is the achievement, which is the repeatable process of doing that. Because I find, and I'd love to get your thoughts on this as well, most people know that they need to set goals. And it's it's almost like a trite term now. Like, I don't want to really say that, but most people know that they need to define where they want to go to in order to get there. Like, life won't go according to plan if you don't have one. But it's not just enough to set up some sort of plan. You've got to be super precise at it, and then you've got to be really committed, consistent with taking those actions, the things that are in your control. Measure yourself on those things, not the result necessarily. The result, again, back to the action, you're going to get some new information. If it's not right, then you can change the actions, but measure yourself on the actions. And that achievement stage is just doing that on a repeatable basis. And then when you get to what you want to achieve, whatever that milestone is, then you're essentially back to that first day. Okay, where am I? What do I want? Mm-hmm. And then the process starts. And I believe that that's the repeatable process. And what I do on a daily basis is just compress that for people, because people that are successful are going to go through that process anyway. But what happens if what you were going to do in a year that you could get done in a quarter? You could get 4 years worth of stuff done in 1 year, 8 years worth of stuff done in 2 years, 16 years worth of stuff done in 3 years. And again, the compound interest of that is huge, because you're not only just going to get that stuff you would have get done in over that amount of time anyway, it's going to be more, because all of those things are going to come together and create some craziness of exponential value that you didn't expect in the first place, then exponential results. I get so excited about it because it's just so
yeah. So for those people who want to sort of move forwards and make these developments in themselves and all that sort of stuff, but also then fall foul of the whole shiny object syndrome, how do you keep them on track? Because, quite often those two types of people are one and the same. You're somebody who wants to keep moving and keep improving and be successful, but also, creative people quite often can create a whole ton of stuff that they want to do, and it doesn't all fit in.
Oh, I see that so much. It's so funny. It's like, oh, this is great. Look at the opportunity I've got here. Because when people realize that they can have whatever they want, like you said, the shiny object syndrome, like the magpie pops up. Yeah, for sure. And that's why that first day, or that creating a gap is so important. Where you are, what do you want? Where do you are, what do you want? And get clear on what it is that they really want first, so you can always come back to that. Like, that's a cycle as well. It's okay, knowing what it is, taking steps. And because these things are significant, they're usually not things that can be achieved in a week. And so it's so easy to fall into that shiny object syndrome and forget what you wanted most in the first place. So a big part of what I do is getting people attached back to what they really want. It's kind of like in a house that we live in right now. Like we're privileged to live in where we live. The house is great, and we have opportunities to do things to it as well. And so it's like, well, if we want to put on like a big extension at the back and create a couple more rooms and make it spectacular, then if that's the most important thing, then doing things like making the laundry room better or putting a new floor in the downstairs shower, they're things that are going to distract from the most important goal. Every time we spend the time doing that, then the big extension, the big game changer gets further away. Now, it's not a question of I can't ever have the big thing. You can. You just have to decide what's most important. So I think bringing them back to the realization of what's most important is what helps with the shiny object syndrome. Sure.
And I guess is the reason why having a coach to keep you having those discussions is helpful.
Yeah, because you get in your own head. You get in your own head. I was like, what is this the most important thing? Is it or not? I'm not sure. And so just having that someone with a different perspective is so important. And it's also coaches aren't better people or know more stuff than anyone else. It's not about that. It's just different perspective. You're in the game of your life, playing it super intensely. You're doing it. You're in there, and you just can't see things that someone else can. And so that different perspective allows for more clarity, and then faster, getting further faster, getting to where you want to be in the most efficient way. Because ultimately, this is a game of maximizing time, because that's the thing we can't get more of.
Yeah. So what about your own development? How have you kept that wasn't very good English, how have you kept moving forwards and learning the things you need to learn to do what you do better?
Yeah, great question again. I think it's just a continual process. I love working with ProAdvisor Coach because we've got a team of coaches which constantly are helping every other coach sharpen the saw. Hey, look, this is a new perspective that I saw from a client, or this is a new concept that I'm fleshing out at the moment. Can I get your feedback? Or like, I've had a bad day. Okay, and then you're going to get called out on, okay, well, is that a story that supports you, right? What's the language you need to support yourself there? And a constant immersive experience of having that feedback. And I think it's also continually reading, continually listening to podcasts, just pushing things in your mind, being intentional about what you're putting in there, being good stuff. You're going to get more good stuff out. Conversely, if you leave that alone, the default is going to be the insert of things that are negative, that aren't going to continue to support you. But I think it's super important to do that. And a lot of people, that individuals in coaching, that's a big issue because it's puts you out there on your own, right? And it without that continuous support, it's more difficult. I mean, it's not impossible, but it's more difficult. I think it's so important for me to keep constantly in touch with as many coaches as possible, make new distinctions. And even if it's things that you've heard before, it's hearing them in a different way, because you change as a person, right? So one thing you heard 5 years ago, which might have been a big distinction, you go away and you use that as a catalyst, learn a bunch more stuff, get a bunch more experience, come back and hear that same thing again 5 years later.
Yeah.
It might do something. It might do nothing for you. It might reinvigorate the same thing, or it might give you something completely different, because you're different. All right. So I think it's continuous improvement. It never stops.
Yeah. You sound coachable yourself, which is good. I remember having conversations with Amanda Alexander, who is one of my guests from, I don't know, show 4 or something, like a long time ago, who's a coach and has been for many years. She's a really good coach. And I remember having conversations, she's one of my friends, I remember having conversations with her in the past where I phoned her up about something, and I say something and she starts asking questions, and I'm like, don't give me the coach thing, just say yes, or or whatever. So we had a bit of a joke about that, which has sort of come home to roost, because again, I'd be interested in us talking in 10 years time about your daughter. My daughter's 13, and she regularly says, oh, stop being all coachy. She'll say something, and instead of me going, oh my god, they're horrible, aren't they, how awful, I'll say, how do you think you could have handled that differently? Or some other equally coachy question, which really winds her up. So she's already been put off coaches, and she's not even employed one yet.
Gosh, that's so funny. Well, yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. Like, being coachable is one of the biggest indicators of success. Being coachable and being hungry, those two together is a master combination of whatever you want to get to.
Yes.
I think that's why it's so. I think that's why it's so important from a coaching perspective to do that awareness part, that first part of it, to get the engagement and ownership from the person. And we work with a lot of companies and teams as well. You need to have that with those people at each individual level. It's not just good enough to say, hey, you're doing this coaching because your boss paid for it, let's do it. Have to have the buy-in, right? You have to have that permission up front. It's that, are you willing to go on a different journey here? Are you willing to be uncomfortable? Are you willing to do the work? And those are the questions, right? Because just as you say, it happened with me and my wife. So stop coaching me.
Yeah. It's just not me.
Didn't mean to, it just came out. But yeah, you have to have that permission, because if people have got their walls up, they've got their barriers up.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what gold you've got coming out of you, or not, as the case may be, but it won't go in, because people just have got their barriers off. It's just going to bounce off. And it's so important, because that's what happens a lot, right? From a consulting perspective or a business perspective, it's a lot of telling rather than asking, and it doesn't matter how the validity of those things that are being told. If the person's got their guard up, it's not going to get in.
No, exactly. I'll tell you what, it's you'll get more of this as time goes on, but having the children thing in there, it is a masterclass in picking your moments. I have some really good conversations where I internally I'm going, oh yes, well done, you've done a great job there, mum. And then others where I'm like, oh my god, didn't pick that moment right, didn't say the right words, note to self.
Right.
We'll rendezvous in 10 years and we'll see how things are going. I'll have a 23-year-old by then, so I'll know whether it's worked or not.
Yeah. Whole different set of problems, right? Yeah.
Exactly. Oh, it's been great talking to you, Nick. So last couple of questions. The first one is, what about on those days where it goes horribly wrong? How do you deal with those days?
Well, we either win or we learn. Right, and I think that it's a set yourself up for success at the start, and with the belief and concept that that's either going to be the case. It's either going to go outstandingly, or it's going to go terribly. But usually, it's somewhere in the middle, and it's just a case of seeing what opportunities there are to learn. How can I learn from this? Mm-hmm. Oftentimes, it's better when there are more learning opportunities because then you get to grow. So I think that's the frame that I come to with in any situation. That's very freeing for me personally, because it allows me to then be at my best, because I'm not judging on the results. I'm just judging in being in the moment, right? Being your best is like it's a situational specific, and it's time bound. It always changes. And you can't be your best until you focus on that, I believe. And then, and when you're reviewing, it's just a case of, what lessons have I got here? Like, what was different here? What would I do differently next time? And doing it from a place of no judgment for yourself, and just focusing on what you can control. I think that's a continual process and a continual lesson for me. And not to say that it's easy, but it's true, and it's always available for you. So I think that having the set beforehand, so you go into it, because that emotional response is something that can be you can be aware of at different levels. If you could start if you've got this feeling of fear coming to you, and you can spot it just when it's in your stomach and it's just kind of starting, then you can deal with it. If it's something that's already up to the top and it's coming out of you and it's like crazy, and you're so fearful, you're so angry, at that point, it's a different context from which you can deal. It's like damage management, rather than dealing with it up front. So I think that upfront way of set yourself up for success is important. And then in the moment, you can start to give yourself that little bit of space, that little bit of grace, to be able to take the approach that serves you the best, and tell yourself the right story which serves you the best and others around you.
Mm-hmm. I love that word, grace. Lovely, thank you. And what about those days where you get to live more, and that's where you get to do more of the things that you want to do and less of the stuff that you don't want to do? What do those days look like?
Yeah, we call that ProAdvisor Coach being in your sweet spots. Yeah, it's those days for me are a balance of working with clients that I've been working with for a long time, talking with new people about potential of how can I help them, working on top of my business of what can I create more, what's the bigger plan, where are we on track. It's being able to do things like we're doing right now, Joe, and sharpen the saw, speak with someone else that is going to allow me to have different thought processes. This really excites me to come on and speak to you, because I know that I'm going to grow from this, and I really appreciate the time. So it's a balance of all those things from a work perspective, and then also being able to work out, spend time with my wife and daughter. Like, all of those things together constitutes the forward process that I'm putting towards to get that right balance. And it's a work in progress, and I think it always will be. But does the day need to be completely balanced like that, or does the week need to be balanced like that? Do I need it all in one day, or do I need it to be intense in some places, in some days of the week, and more reflective in others? I think that's a process that I'm still figuring out, and I think always will be.
Mm-hmm. Lovely, thank you. Really appreciate talking to you, Nick. Tell people how they can find out more about you and connect with you.
Yeah, thank you. So I'd love to share with everyone here a link that I have. I have a website called One Man's Balance. If you go to One Man's Balance / free mind scan, that's a tool that I have is around creating that awareness. So go to there, have a look at that, and you can get me. You can send me an email at nick@proadvisorcoach.com as well. And I'd like to send you my LinkedIn link as well. But I spend most of my time on LinkedIn in terms of my social. But yeah, those three areas. If people want to come out and find out more, have a conversation, just check out some of my videos. I like to throw some stuff out there, whatever's on my mind. I'm always open to meeting new people, and some people that I can help, some people that I can help in some ways, some other ways. But yeah, any chance of interaction is always cool. So I love meeting people, and I believe everything's about relationships, Joe. I think that really comes as we get a deep fulfillment from that.
Absolutely. Thank you. I'm really glad we did this again. I think this is even better than the last time.
Well, yeah, of course.
Of course. Of course, we could have predicted that. But thank you. I really appreciate you giving the time up again. But yeah, I really enjoyed today. So thank you.
Thanks, Joe. I appreciate you.
All this information is available in the show notes. If you go to powertolivemore.com / in this case 165, you'll find them there. And this week I want to keep banging on about my networking group, Counterpoint Networking, which meets every Monday afternoon at 2:00 British summertime. As much as anything else, apart from the networking, which I think is really good, I would say that, it's very much about building relationships and really getting to know each other so that we can help each other, learn from each other, and refer each other as those sort of moments appear, because we know each other so well and we've got that whole sort of know, like, trust thing going on. But also going back to what I said about the learning, we have been having discussions each week about topical subjects, things that people want to know more about, and we've had so many resources shared. It's really exciting. And what I do is, after the meeting, I go back to the original event and add all the resources that have been shared during and after the meeting by the other attendees and myself into the post. So where you have an event with the details to get into the event in the future, once the event's been and gone, I go in and replace all the content that's in there with the resources and the links that have been shared, so that you can go back and see those. And so you can go back and see them if you're at the meeting and you need to refer back. But also, as soon as you join and become a member of Counterpoint Networking, you can go back and look over previous events and see the resources that were shared. And seriously, there are tons. The week before, there was a page of different resources and links and so on. And this week, much the same. I haven't updated it yet. But by the time this goes out, it will have been updated. But I know that there's already a good few links in there that I'll be sharing. So it's a really great place, as I say, to build relationships, but also to share resources and learn from each other. And what we did this week is we talked about how we can develop it moving forwards to basically ask a question, think about a topic that we're going to discuss at each meeting, so that people can come along and join us, either because they want to learn about that topic or because they have some expertise in that area and want to share as part of that discussion around the topic. So really exciting with some of the ideas that we came up with this week. So again, it's counterpointnetworking.co.uk if you'd like to register for the next one, which is on Monday the 6th of July. Then you can go to counterpointnetworking.co.uk /200706, and that'll take you straight in to register for the next session. And again, the show notes for this week's show are at powertolivemore.com /165, and we look forward to speaking to you next week.
Use your power to live more.